Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Ramadan Journey. I am your host Afif Khan, and our travel companion is Imam Muhammad Al-Asi. He is the author of the Ascendant Quran, and currently we are through 7 volumes in print. We expect that by the end of the year, inshallah, we're going to have up to 10 volumes in print. The last volume will be up through the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah. We expect that most of these discussions that have taken place and that are going to take place, that most of this information is contained in the Ascendant Quran. And so if you would like to look at any of these things in more detail and go in more depth with regard to any of these discussions, please feel free to pick up your own copies of the Ascendant Quran. Today is Yawm al-Quds. We are going to explore why this particular day is important in Ramadan. We have Imam Muhammad Al-Asi. He's going to help us understand the importance of that day. Imam, welcome.
Alhamdulillah.
Could you go into the historical origins of Yawm al-Quds?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وصلاته وسلامه على خير خلقه رحمة الله للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه الغر الميامين. Yawm al-Quds was designated by the late Imam Khomeini, may Allah rest his soul in peace, as being the last Friday in the holy month of Ramadan. Yawm al-Quds is a day, which Yawm al-Quds means the global day of Jerusalem. Yawm al-Quds is observed by many Muslims around the world who are concerned, and I mean seriously concerned, not just verbally and rhetorically, but by action and deed, by strategy and by careful planning. They are concerned with the liberation of Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and the Holy Land altogether, every inch included. Liberating it from Zionist occupation. There are demonstrations and protests that are held in major cities around the world dedicated to this day, in which Muslims and also non-Muslims, Palestinians and non-Palestinians, Muslims, Christians and Jews participate in expressing their will towards the eventual and climactic liberation of Jerusalem and Palestine. Yawm al-Quds is a day that was located at the end of the month of Ramadan. The last Jumu'ah in the month of Ramadan falls in the special last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. These are the 10 days of i'tikaf. I'tikaf is a time period that is set aside voluntarily by individuals who want to devote the nights of those last 10 days to a heightened consciousness and awareness of Allah's power and His authority. So Yawm al-Quds falls in that stretch of days. Yawm al-Quds also happens to be in the vicinity of what many Muslims consider to be Laylat al-Qadr, the night of power or the night of divine calculation. It is also in according to many scholars, it falls somewhere on one night of those 10 last nights of Ramadan. And some of these scholars scrutinized the issue even more and said it's towards the end of those last 10 nights rather than towards the beginning. But this is not the time to go into any details here. So Yawm al-Quds is located in that time frame.
So as far as the responsibility of the average Muslim on this day, he's expected to participate, he or she is expected to participate in these demonstrations, or if there's not one in your city, then perhaps to organize one to bring attention to the occupation of the Holy Land.
Yes, of course, there's no statement about Yawm al-Quds per se in the Quran or in the Sunnah. You won't come across something telling you that this is Yawm al-Quds in a hadith or in an ayah. What you will find in the ayat and in the ahadith are meanings and orientations towards the liberation of Al-Quds and Palestine. So this is a procedural matter. If a Muslim wants to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and has his attention focused on the future culmination of Islamic efforts to liberate Palestine, then there has to be some involvement in this. And Yawm al-Quds is one such involvement. And it should not be limited to Yawm al-Quds. The more the merrier. If there are other days in the year that are dedicated to liberating Palestine, whether it's on the popular level as Yawm al-Quds is, or on many other spheres in life. There's an academic sphere, there's a military sphere, there's a civil sphere, there's many spheres. And if someone else, some other leader wants to dedicate some other day or some other time for this purpose, I think it would reinforce and it would echo the meanings of Yawm al-Quds.
We're going to take a break now for the next segment. In that segment, we're going to talk about why Palestine and the Holy Land is an important part of Islamic self-determination. Please take this break with us. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome Ramadan. Welcome Ramadan.
And we're back. In a certain sense, for much of the occupation in the very beginning, Palestine for quite a few of those decades was just a forgotten issue. The whole subject, insofar as its liberation is concerned, was coterminous with the initiation of a day like Yawm al-Quds. Imam, could you explain to us why the liberation of Palestine is such an important part of Islamic self-awareness and Islamic self-determination? And as you know, that the land of Palestine, the Holy Land, has been occupied for over 6 decades. Why haven't we Muslims been able to liberate it for all this time?
To answer that type of question, reference should be made to the first verses in Surah Bani Israel, the 17th surah in the Quran, known by some as Surah Al-Isra, the night journey, or the seniority. In these ayat, there's an outline of the dynamics, the ideological and the political dynamics that will interplay between Muslims who understand their Islam beyond just the performance of rituals into the ideological and political sphere of human activity between these types of Muslims and the types of Jews who extend their political definition of themselves into also the ideological and the political sphere. And these ayat, I can't go through them because it'll take time to quote them and it'll take time to translate them. Suffice it here to say that anyone who wants further information should refer to these ayat in Surah Al-Isra. Hopefully they'll have more or less an accurate translation, because I want to caution the readers that many of these translations are not as accurate as they should be. And in that, they will find, in those first 7 or 8 ayat, they will find this information that pertains to the culminating effects of the clash of the two wills, the ideological political expression of Islam on one side and the ideological and political expression of Judaism on the other side. The ayah that, or the sentence that in these ayat that I'm referring to that zeroes in on the question that you posed is فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ لِيَسُوءُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَلِيَدْخُلُوا الْمَسْجِدَ كَمَا دَخَلُوهُ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ وَلِيُتَبِّرُوا مَا عَلَوْا تَتْبِيرًا. This ayah, or this portion of this segment of ayat, is saying when the last time comes to pass, because previously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these ayat spoke about Bani Israel and their history with Jerusalem and the Holy Land. So here we're reaching the last cycle, or the last portion of their history with the Holy Land. So it says, فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ, when the final promise comes to pass, لِيَسُوءُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, they, meaning Allah's committed subjects, this is in reference to the committed Muslims, لِيَسُوءُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, they will disgrace your faces. And they, the committed Muslims, will disgrace your, the committed Zionists, faces. وَلِيَدْخُلُوا الْمَسْجِدَ كَمَا دَخَلُوهُ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ, and they, meaning the committed Muslims, will enter into the masjid. This is in reference to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, the first Qibla, the third haram of the Muslims, the third sanctuary. وَلِيَدْخُلُوا الْمَسْجِدَ كَمَا دَخَلُوهُ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ, they're going to enter this sanctuary the same way they entered it the first time. So this tells us that there is a clash of wills here between the Zionists, who happen to be, not all Jews are Zionists in the sense that is expressed by the Israeli nation state, but those who fall into this definition, which has become a monopoly of the Israeli nation state. They say that they speak for all of the Jews, and they have this military, and they have plans right now on confiscating Al-Haram al-Sharif, the area in which Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa is on. As we speak, there are attempts to partition the place, make a portion for it accessible to Muslims, another portion of it accessible to Jews. There are tunnels that are being built beneath the structure of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa that have the omen of causing the collapse of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. So these are conflagration issues that will bring the committed Muslims and the committed Zionist Jews into this type of the end of days confrontation.
In the next segment, we're going to try to look at what the meaning of Zionism is. It was briefly referenced here that not all Jews belong to that particular ideology. We're going to try to understand what that means. We'd like you to come back. Please take this break with our sponsors. Stay tuned.
Welcome Ramadan. Welcome Ramadan.
Welcome back. We're talking about Yawm al-Quds, the occupation of Palestine. Could you go briefly into what the meaning of Zionism is and what that has to do with the occupation of the Holy Land? We understand that it's a political ideology that's very akin to imperialism. And so can you help us understand it a little bit better? You suggested in the last segment that not all Jews belong to it. There are only certain kinds of Jews that have committed to this ideological orientation. Could you help us better understand it?
Zionism, as it turns out to be, is a racist, expansionist, militarist occupation of the Holy Land. It was presented at the beginning as being an ideological shelter for Jews who have been living in their history in a diaspora. They have no homeland of their own. They're scattered among the nations of the world. They've been subjected to ghetto life, discriminated against, oppressed in certain places.
Is this mostly their European experience?
Mostly it's European. Most of this is European. As a matter of fact, the Jews who were living in the Muslim parts of the world experienced the least type of discrimination or prejudice in the social sphere, in their civic lives. As a matter of fact, when Muslims were thriving in Andalusia, in Iberia, what is today called Spain and Portugal, the Jews were also thriving along with the Muslims and the Christians. It was like a high point, even by the recognition of many Jewish historians. It was one of the peaking periods in Jewish history.
Bani Israel goes back a long way, thousands of years. Does Zionism also go back thousands of years? It may have, does it just have precursors then, and is it mostly a phenomenon of modernity?
Well, the notion of Zionism, which is the return to Zion, Zionism taken from the word Zion, and Zion is one of the hills or mountains in the area of Jerusalem. So that yearning for the return to Zion has always been there. It's historical, it's contemporary. It's just, what do you mean by that exactly? And how do you play this out? It is very unfortunate, I think, for the Jewish people in the world that they've, just like the Palestinians have been occupied by a militant Zionism, mistreated, abused, suffering from a diaspora of their own, the prejudice, the discrimination, all of the ailments and all of the ills that the Jews have been complaining of in their history, they, in the form of Zionist Israel, have inflicted them in a concentrated and multiple manner on the Palestinian population and the adjacent territories there. So Zionism, just like it has occupied the Holy Land and Palestine militarily, it has occupied the Jewish context ideologically and mentally. So Zionism has inflicted harm on the Palestinians, and it has inflicted harm on the Jews themselves. And in this interplay, as odd as it may sound, but there hasn't been enough communication among the victims of Zionism, who are Jews, Christians, and Muslims, to get their act together and then resolve to finish off this oppressive and this racist regime that rules in Jerusalem and in Palestine altogether.
Are the victims of Zionism, as you said, some of them are Christians also, are they just Palestinian Christians, or are they also, like, say, American Christians? Are they victims of Zionism also?
Of course they are. There are the practitioners of Zionism in the Jewish religious garb. I think if you really read very closely the literature that goes back and forth between Christians and Jews, I think there is more animosity by Zionist Jews towards Christians than there is towards Muslims. One of the recommendations for an observing Zionist Jew is that if he passes by a church, that it is recommended that he spit on that church or on the sidewalk in front of the church. I don't know of an equivalent pertaining to Muslims. If they're passing by a masjid, they would do such a thing to a masjid. And this has its historical origins, and it has its details in the conflicting type of history surrounding the advent of Jesus, the son of Mary, Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. And so there's a lot of tension here. But the way the political world is set up is that there is a common purpose between Zionism and imperialism, and therefore some Christians have become Zionists themselves, and so they have an umbrella of protection. We haven't found this to happen in the Islamic context. Therefore, most of the hope for the liberation of Palestine, as the world is today, doesn't lie in the Christian world, it lies in the Islamic world.
Thank you for this explanation. We have run out of time for this program. Obviously, with regard to this subject, the Holy Land, Palestine, Zionism, it perhaps could have taken up all 30 programs in Ramadan. It's such a big subject. We're just unfortunate to have been able to only devote one program to it. We hope that you come back for the future programs. We only have a few left. Same channel, same time. And we hope to again see you tomorrow. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.